I've seen a lot of entitled people walk through courtroom doors, but nothing prepared me for the morning Vivian Hardcastle arrived in a state-funded SUV flanked by two attorneys, wearing a Chanel jacket that belonged at a charity gala and carrying the specific expression of someone who has already decided this proceeding isn't worth her full attention. She wasn't just confident, she was contemptuous in a way that had clearly never cost her anything. In a way that told me before she opened her mouth that she had spent 20 years in rooms that rearranged themselves around her and saw no reason this one would be different. And when she did speak, when she looked me directly in the eye, laughed at these proceedings and told me that I was a municipal judge and her husband was the governor of this state, and she thought I knew what that meant. I knew exactly what the next 45 seconds were going to look. Why? What happened in that courtroom that morning proves something I have believed for 30 years on this bench. The title beside your name means nothing in this room. What matters is what you did and what you do when you're finally required to account for it. If you believe that no title, no husband's office, and no amount of political insulation places any person above the reach of this bench, stay for every word of this story. Because what happened to Vivian Hardcastle after that laugh is the reason cases like this one still matter. The case file on my desk told a specific story, 47 seconds of video, a flower arrangement at a farmer's market, a 52-year-old florist shoved backward into her own display table, a bruised wrist, a cracked display case that had taken 2 years to save for, and the words captured clearly by a bystander's phone, "You're nobody. Do you know what my husband can do to a business like yours?" 3.2 million people had watched it by morning. Vivian Hardcastle, wife of Governor Edmund Hardcastle, 3 years into his second term, entered the courtroom at precisely 9 Sundag. Not late, but in the specific manner of someone who has decided that punctuality is a form of condescension rather than respect. The Chanel jacket was cream, the jewelry substantial enough to catch the courtroom fluorescence from across the room. The heels, the kind that belong at a ribbon-cutting ceremony rather than a municipal hearing. She was flanked by two full partners walking one on each side as though her presence required escort. Behind them, a personal aide carrying a custom leather document case. Harrison Polk, 4 appearances before this bench, never once unprepared, sat at the defense table with the expression of a man who has been given a difficult brief and has made his peace with it. In the gallery's second row, said Rosa Delgado, dark floral blouse with her own flowers pinned at the collar, wrist in a brace. The particular stillness of someone who has been told by everyone around her that this room is where the answer comes, and who has decided to believe that for exactly as long as it takes to find out if they're right. Vivian Hardcastle did not look at the bench when she entered. She looked at the room. She was deciding whether it was worth her time. Hulkrose, and presented the defense position with the polished efficiency of someone who has spent a career making difficult facts sound like reasonable misunderstandings. The charges were an overreach. The incident at the market was a misunderstanding about an order that had not been formally confirmed through any documented reservation process. The physical contact. He used the word contact, not shove, was incidental. The kind of inadvertent thing that happens in crowded market settings when emotions run high on both sides. The video, while regrettable in how it had been framed by media coverage, did not capture the full context of a situation that had become unnecessarily confrontational. Then, with the seamless transition of someone who has learned exactly how to introduce an argument he is not technically making, Polk mentioned Mrs. Hardcastle's charitable work. Hundreds of thousands raised for children's hospitals, arts programs, and underserved schools, food banks across 3 counties. He did not say this made the charges inappropriate. He didn't need to. The implication moved through the room like weather. I listened to every word. Then I asked my first question. Mr. Polk, the video transcript your office provided quotes Mrs. Hardcastle saying, "You're nobody. Do you know what my husband can do to a business like yours? Can you explain for this court what Mrs. Hardcastle meant by that statement?" Pope pivoted smoothly. Emotions were running high. The statement was hyperbolic. No actual threat to Miss Delgado's business was intended or implied. I nodded. Then I asked my second question. Has the governor's office made any contact with any regulatory body, licensing authority, or commercial permitting office regarding Miss Delgado or her business in the 6 weeks since this incident? The silence that followed was not Pulse's. It was Vivian's. Her head turned toward him with an expression that told everyone in the room with enough experience to read it that the answer to that question was not no. I noted the silence for the record. Then I asked to see the video. It played without narration, no commentary, no caption, no framing of any kind. Just 47 seconds of footage from a farmer's market on a Saturday morning. Clear enough that every person in the courtroom could read the expressions on both faces, the approach. Vivian and two friends moving toward Rose's stall with the unhurried ease of people who have never had to wait for anything. The demand, Vivian indicating the P&E arrangement, the exchange of words, Rose's explanation, careful, non-aggressive, both hands visible on the table, the specific body language of someone who was trying to resolve a situation without escalating it. Vivian's response escalating anyway. The reach across the table, then the shove. Both hands deliberate force. Rosa stumbling backward into her own display. Arrangements scattering across the market floor. The cracked display case audible even on the phone's microphone. And the words captured with complete clarity. You're nobody. Do you know what my husband can do to a business like yours? Then Vivian picking up the arrangement, walking away, not looking back. The courtroom was silent when it ended. I looked at Vivian Harkle. She had watched the footage with studied distance. The specific expression of someone who has decided that the woman on the screen and the woman at the defense table are two separate matters that require no acknowledged connection between them, no recognition, no reaction. A fate maintained removing a weather report about a city she has never visited. I asked her directly, Mrs. Hardcastle, do you believe that what you did to Rosa Delgado was wrong? Polk began to rise. I raised one hand without looking at him. I asked Mrs. Hardcastle. He sat. The room waited. Vivian leaned slightly forward. She looked at me directly, not with the managed, careful eye contact of someone who has been coached on how to address a judge, but with the specific directness of someone who has decided that the clearest available move is to make her position as visible as possible. She said she thought it had been handled badly, but frankly, and she wanted to be honest, she thought this entire proceeding was an embarrassment. I was a municipal judge. Her husband was the governor of this state. The idea that she was sitting in this room being treated like a criminal over a flower arrangement at a farmer's market was ridiculous. And she thought I knew it. Then she laughed. Not nervously, not as a social reflex. This was the specific laugh of someone who has assessed the available positions, selected contempt as the strongest one, and committed to it fully. The laugh of a woman who has been in rooms her entire life where that particular performance ended conversations, redirected proceedings, and reminded the person across from her of the relevant power differential. The courtroom went completely still. I did not raise my voice. I did not reach for the gavel. I looked at Vivian Hardcastle for a long moment. The look of someone who has just been handed in open court on the permanent record of a legal proceeding, the clearest possible statement of everything this hearing needed to establish. I said, Mrs. Hardcastle, I want you to understand something. In 45 seconds, you're going to understand why they are. I turned to the bailiff, Vivian Hardcastle, cream Chanel jacket, statement jewelry, state SUV in the courthouse lot, two flanking attorneys who had spent